The following is for informational purposes only. For medical advice, please see a medical professional.
Welcome to Staying Alive with Margaret and Susy. Thanks for being with us in this episode. And we're recording this episode in early March, and it's going to come out next week, March 2026. And we decided this exact moment requires finding our joy. And we're going to do this episode in two parts. This one, we're going to talk about finding joy. And then in the next episode, I think we'll talk about what happens when our lives are more limited. We begin to lose independence. How do we maintain agency and keep finding the joy once we've found it and our lives are different? And so, in this episode, what we're going to talk about and help you think about is what matters to you? What are your goals besides surviving? And what are the things that are worth living for? Those are just different ways to kind of think about the same thing. And because we all need a reason to live. If we don't, like, why carry it out all the healthy lifestyle tips that Susie and I have been talking to you about? Because who cares, right? But we want to keep living, and we want you to keep living, and we want to think about how to do that despite what's going on in our physical bodies as we age or what's happening in the world around us as we're experiencing right
Mhm.
now. And in our parents' generation, I was thinking, Susie and I both know this, that what they were taught mattered is dads were taught to matter. What mattered was work, and the women were taught what mattered was family. But the world is different now, and our lives are different now because we're in the later stages of life. We're beyond career. We're beyond raising family, and so we find new ways and other ways to enjoy our lives and find joy. And you may have noticed one of the reasons I love Susie is that we are joyful people, and it's not because we have better lives than other people or more resources or we take some magic happy pills, which may be available, but we don't do that. We don't do that stuff anymore. It's because we live engaged lives. And having engaged lives is what gives human beings something to care about. And Susie and I care about many, many things. And that's what we're going to tell you about today. So, Susie, you want to make a comment here? Or
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it is important, especially when times are hard or there are things that come up in your life that are difficult. It's important to find things that engage you, for that make you happy. I We've all had times in our lives where things were scary or stressful or out of your control. I think that there are things that come up that you just don't can't do anything about.
yeah,
You can't control.
yeah,
And
like the
it's
world this
easy,
week. Yeah.
yeah, it's easy to feel despaired and like overwhelmed. I've noticed in my own life that turning off the news once in a while and watching something on a movie that is totally sort of benign, silly, entertainment, or just getting out of the house or, doing things. I've just got over a respiratory virus, so I'm, um, you know, getting out of the house is a big, big thing that's making me happy right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. Well,
Yeah.
I know for me, just thinking about the world this week, like Friday, I was really bummed. And it just so happens every Friday afternoon, I get together and play music with friends. And then on Saturday, I had a deadline for a writing project, which is also something I love to do. And I decided I'm going to write an essay on some things to do with world events. And I wrote that and submitted it. And then on Sunday, I had a nice face to face event planned where I was connecting with other people that I cared about.
Right.
And by the end of the day yesterday, I was completely transformed. You know, it's like the world events were the
Yeah,
same. I was the same person, but my feelings about it were transformed. And I realized in prepping for this episode, wow, I just did the things that where I find joy. And
sure.
that's why I'm
Yeah,
transformed. And that's so perfect leading into this episode today that we
right.
decided we were going to do. Uh,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, my husband was a journalism major and loves to read the newspaper. And I think there's a little too much information that comes in, and um, I encourage him and encourage myself to go out and connect with people and do things that are a little more um, joyful. Like this weekend, he went out to visit a friend and talk about trees
yeah, he's
and
an arborist, by
he's
the
an
way.
arborist,
We have,
and
mhm,
and just
mm,
and it's a social connection, but it's also something he really cares about. So I myself have been kind of stuck at home because I was ill, but I find joy in cooking. That's
mhm.
one of the ways that I entertain myself and I love to do. And so that's what I did yesterday. And it
Well,
makes me feel good.
it's interesting when you say that, it occurs to me that I want other people to think about this. What you just described are activities that you were involved in professionally. You did
Hmm.
cooking classes and canning and different things. And then your husband was an and is an arborist. And so you have both found ways to give back to the community and continue
Hmm.
those activities that you did in your careers, even though you're essentially retired. And so I want people to think about that too. Like people who
Right.
think, oh, life is over now that I'm retired. Like, what do you do when you're retired? You take the skill set that you have that brings you joy and you figure out how to give back in your community. And
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
for one.
sometimes people, use that time to do things that they didn't have time to do when they were working,
Yeah.
like travel or spending more time, doing a sport or, playing golf or pickleball or whatever. But yeah, and more time to connect with people. I
Hmm.
also noticed that in my life, a lot of my friends were busy raising children. And
Hmm.
then when they're done with that, they will have more time to connect with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
that's
And
true.
I want to spend a minute thinking about, because I went through this. If there's anyone in the audience who's thinking, "Gosh, I have no idea what brings me joy. Like I have no idea."
Mhm.
And I went through that at one sort of early midlife period where I was like 44, 45 years old. My son was grown and gone. He was 21 at that point, and I was going through like a career change, and I was a little bit out of sorts. And I heard a psychologist talking about, you know, do what you love, find your parachute, and like these
Right,
different things that
right.
were a thing, like what find your joy, and it's like, and what the psychologist said, I don't remember who it was. If you have no idea what it is, if it's possible, if you have a parent that's still living, call them up and ask them, when I was an infant, what were the things that most made me smile? And
Oh,
I was so lucky
interesting.
because I had an opportunity to do that. I was only
Oh, wow.
44 years old, and my parents lived till just a couple years ago. And so I called my mom up, and I said, "What was it for me, Mom?" And she said, right
Uh-huh.
away, said, "Music."
Oh, isn't that funny?
And it,
Yeah,
it
isn't
was
that
so
funny?
interesting because
Yeah.
I'd always loved music, but I'd never really incorporated it into my life. And I was between jobs, I was done raising kids, and I just decided right then and there, I'm going to start taking guitar lessons. And I was 45 years old, and people were like, well, aren't you a little old to be starting that? Or, I went to
No way, you're never too old for that.
the class, and it was like all people my age, but I was the only one that had never had a music lesson as a kid. I just hadn't,
Mhm.
and for financial constraints and such. And so I gave that to myself. It brought me so much joy. I stuck
Yeah.
with those music classes for years, and now I still do music every week,
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that's great.
every
Isn't that
week.
interesting that your mom
Yeah,
had insight? That's really good.
yeah,
I found that when I had a baby, the music calmed them down. I don't know if it brought them joy, but it really calmed them down.
yeah, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
something that you can keep doing.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Music is so good for the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a soul mender. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So think about what those things are, and even if you're at the stage of life where our parents aren't still living, to try and think back to when you were a kid, as far back as you can remember, what were the things that brought you the most joy? And maybe
Hmm.
for you, it is like being in your physical body and being out there running around. And if you know
Hmm.
that, like you have to have a physical component to what brings you joy, even if it's like, you're not really walking, but you can get on the exercise bike or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And for me, it was also very much nature. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I could just like lie in the grass and look up at the clouds for hours. And I mean, so when I really want to calm myself deeply, I've never been one to like be able to just sit in a room and meditate. But if I'm out in nature, I can really connect deeply in that way,
Yeah.
and it's really
I
good.
really found that with children, with both my grandchildren, being outside changes things for them so much. It not only brings them joy, but it also calms them down.
Yeah.
So it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Now,
And I
so
think
let's
that's
just
interesting because I think my love of cooking started as a child because I spent a lot of time with one grandmother who had a garden and cooked all the time, and another
uh-huh.
grandmother who was a really good cook, and I was always drawn to that.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
yeah.
And it's interesting, like even if like my sister and Catherine and I, we were raised in the same household, but from an early age, what gave her joy was animals. And
Oh
she
yeah.
would she
Yeah.
would collect feral animals out of the yard because
I
when
remember when she had a dog.
I'm talking about like she would get wild rabbits out of the yard and
Uh-huh.
squirrels and chipmunks because my mother was scared of animals, but that was what brought her joy, and so
Yeah.
she needed to have that so much, and she's always given that to herself. And it's interesting that it's just to think about how we're all different, even if we were raised in the same household. There seems to
Right.
be these innate things that give
Yeah.
one joy that are different, even if it's your sibling. And so, for many people, it is pets, and we
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
know that, like
True.
they say
Yeah.
that bring 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 pets into the senior center or something,
Hmm.
well,
That's right.
that may be fine for my sister Catherine. It's like,
Does she have
okay,
a pet right now?
for me, bring in a guitar player I can sing
Mhm.
with, okay?
Does Catherine have a pet right now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has a pet. Yeah.
Yeah, I find a lot of joy with my animals.
Mm,
We when there have been times where we didn't have a pet, we really missed it,
yeah.
and sure enough, we get one.
Hmm.
And right now we have a dog and a cat, but sometimes we have two cats, and yeah, I find a lot of joy
And
in my animals.
our friends who haven't had children, many of them, pets is just
Mhm.
so important to them. Remember, remember one of her friend Mike, his wife had so many dogs, and he
Yes.
said to me, "She can have as many dogs as she wants because otherwise she's gonna want to have a baby." And they were later in life, and as far as he was concerned, I'm done with
Yeah, she
that.
had a lot of animals,
Yeah.
not just
So like,
dogs.
she can have dogs, horses, you name it.
Yeah, they had chickens and ducks and dogs and cows and
hmm
yeah, and horses and yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I understand that like children and grandchildren do bring a lot of joy. I know they bring
Yeah,
joy
yeah,
to you, but it's different for everybody. And I mean,
that's right.
I live in a very diverse community where, there are many like same-sex couples and, different lifestyles where a lot of people aren't having children
Right.
for
Yeah, and
for a variety of reasons.
I don't think everybody should have children personally, but but my grandchildren do bring me a lot of joy.
I
I
know
mean,
they
it's
do.
my favorite part of the day when my grandson comes home from kindergarten.
I know that. And
And
this
it's special, and I'm lucky. I feel really lucky because they are close and I can
yeah,
see them every day. But you know, kids are also a lot of work and a lot of heartache and
right.
there's a lot of stuff that goes along with it. For
And it's
sure.
great that that brings you joy. Like
It does, yeah.
I was talking to a woman recently who like she and her husband bought a house across the street from her mother-in-law and father-in-law when they had their child was young, and she was imagining, oh, you can have grandma in the life.
Hmm.
Well, this particular grandma was so engaged at a really high level career that she never had to retire from. She was a writer, like she was fully engaged in her career. She had no interest in doing any grandmother thing, unless it was like bring your daughter to work day and teach your female grandchild to have the same life that a man could have or whatever. But
Yeah,
this mother was heartbroken, and it's just important to realize, like, okay, not all of us aging
right.
want to raise our grandkids. Yeah,
That's
we're
right.
not
That's right.
not.
No, I totally, and a lot of my people that I know have said to me, "Oh, well, I don't know about that. I
And
wouldn't want to do that." Yeah.
and when the thing is the things that bring us joy. I believe this is I like they're the things that we felt from the earliest age before we even knew what our gender was or what our role assignments were going to be when we got old. Like there's so many aspects of being a human being that are just innate things that bring joy to us as humans, and those are
Hmm.
the things that we want to have in our lives because those people that bring us joy, they might not always be there, or
That's right.
the family members and friends, we age to a point where they're not even in this world anymore. They're not
Right.
alive, and so it's so important. And we're going to talk more about that in the next episode because I have many examples of elder friends that I saw what they did to keep the joy going in their lives to the very last
Hmm.
breath, regardless of whether they had any living family member alive
Right.
or not. They knew what those things were in life that brought them joy, and they figured out how to keep doing it. So that'll be our next
That'll
episode.
be a next episode. And I think it's important to realize that everybody's different and everybody has, certain things. And Margaret and I have a lot of things in common, but we also have things that are different. I don't play music. I sort of wish I did, but I don't. And I love music, but we both love cooking and
And
family is important.
we love cooking together and feeding our friends and family and
Yeah.
sitting around a table
Yeah.
sharing. And so that's something to think about too for some single person who might say, oh, I don't have any family, I have no family. But
Uh-huh.
your family is what you make it too.
That's
and
right.
um
That's right.
and so Susie's
We,
family to me, and I've taught that to my son too.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we had a thing at work one time and we were supposed to go around the table at a management meeting and say, what we really wanted, something we really wanted. And most people said they wanted to go to Italy or they wanted, do something really exciting. And you know what I said?
What?
I said I wanted a new dining room table. And they all thought I was nuts. But except
Yeah.
one person who was my boss, and she said, I get it.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
time, that was like what I found something that I thought would be great. I don't
To
know.
gather people around your
Yeah,
table and
yeah.
feed them, it brings so much joy.
Yeah.
And another thing I've noticed is that as we age and there are less and less people in our lives that we know because they start to die off, to be honest, is that um, it brings me joy to just go out on the street and talk to strangers. Like I live in an urban area. Sometimes I just like hang out at the cafe and
Yeah.
just talk to people.
I've seen
And
you do that.
it's so much fun. Like
Yeah, my husband does that. Yeah.
I have a farmer's market in my neighborhood and it's tulip season now and I was lined up with the ladies picking tulips together and giving tips to like, did you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so to talk to a stranger and make them smile, sometimes that in itself can be a joy.
And never feel like you don't have something to contribute. You always have
Hmm.
something to contribute and people like to hear from you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
they
do.
really do.
They do. And everybody has something to add. Well,
Well, I think
I
that
think
really
we're,
covers it.
I think it does today. Yeah. Don't before we leave today though, I want to
Yes.
remind you to like the episodes, subscribe and follow us.
Oh, that's good. That's good to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And so we're going to leave it here. And until next time, we
We
are
are
staying
staying alive.
alive.
You've been listening to Staying Alive with Margaret and Susy. This show is hosted by Margaret Cooley and Susy Hymas. To subscribe to our show, leave a comment or ask a question, please visit stayingalivewithmargaretandsusy.com. Our podcast is available on all major podcast platforms. If you've enjoyed our program, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening.